Good afternoon. I used to be a professor, so good afternoon. And I love the people in the back row. Those are the people that get all the questions. Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come across the pond and talk with my fellow practitioners that relates to urban freight. Again, my name is Tamiko Burnell. I work with the U.S. Department of Transportation in the Office of Freight. The specialty areas I work in is, of course, I manage our National Highway Freight Program, and that's our funding source to all of our states in the United States in terms of infrastructure projects related to freight, and about 10% of those funds go to multimodal projects. I also manage our freight capacity program, and that's where we really connect with our states, our local governments, and our universities to make sure that they're getting all the knowledge and professional development they need to sustain their programs and build their freight-related infrastructure. And then my third task is working with the Urban Freight, which is a project that's very near and dear to my heart. And I enjoy working with Henrietta and Mons all the time. I just wanted to talk about three things today. And I didn't do PowerPoint because you're going to see so many PowerPoints today, so I refrained from the PowerPoint. I'm going to talk about the benefits we've seen in twinning so far. I'm going to talk about some of the products and achievements we've seen, and also I'm going to talk about where we're going next when it comes to urban freight twinning. So in terms of the benefits we've seen so far, for those of you who may not be familiar, we really started our relationship in late 2014. And for the United States, this really started off as a very small, narrow project, and basically a white paper dealing with twinning for the United States side, and 4 projects for the EU side. It slowly grew into 3 projects on the United States side and 4 projects on the EU side, which you're hearing about today. The projects on the US side really centered around making sure that our states and our localities, our local governments, had the tools they needed to implement the funding that was coming through our National Highway Freight funding program, and also help them to develop plans. As you may or may not know, every state in the United States by law is required to have a freight transportation plan. So we require them to plan for their freight dollars and also have it be fiscally constrained. That means the money that they're getting, making sure that it's going to projects that have been planned out with their local governments. So our project centered on one is on the infrastructure side. We looked at taking our context-sensitive solutions guide that was heavily used 10 or 15 years ago and making sure that we updated it to incorporate freight and safety into that scheme of projects. That document has been published in consultation with our Institution of Transportation Engineering. And it can be found on the web, and I'll make sure that Henrietta has that website to put in the notes. Other tasks that we're working on is it's about 99% complete. We developed a guideline for our states and local government in terms of implementing operations, logistics, and technology solutions for urban freight. And that guide actually talks about the strategies and how they implement it into their planning process, and then rubber meets the road, but also gives them concrete examples from the United States as well as the European side in terms of where these certain strategies have been used. And the third project we are in the process of developing is one of the biggest things we've heard from our states and localities is just not the rubber meets the road projects, but it's also about communication, coordination, and collaboration, because these are non-traditional partners that they're now having to reach out to that traditionally they haven't had to work with, especially our private industry partners. So we're focusing on guidance to help them do that as well. So those are the projects that you'll hear more about in the United States, hopefully when you join us in the fall, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So those have been some of the direct benefits. Indirect benefits is Urban Freight Initiative has went way beyond anything Henrietta and I expected. It's an initiative built on collaboration, not funding. When I say that is we spend a lot of funding on both sides of the pond, but we don't actually exchange funding. And we found that agreement to be very successful. To date, we've held 3 urban freight roundtables at TRB. The membership increases every year. As a product of that, we have been able to discuss over 30 or 40 projects dealing with policy, research, and infrastructure. We've been able to publish those products, and we can disseminate them to the United States as well as the European government. After our first urban freight roundtable, we found that we needed to find a way to continuously send out the message of what was being discussed beyond the 30 or 40 or 50 people present. The second compendium of urban freight projects will be out in the next couple of months. So again, we will pass that on to our European partners to disseminate across the pond. Other things that we've been able to do is we've also started our Urban Freight webinar series. Most of you, I hope you've been connected in. That went from about 50 or 60 in participation to our last one last month having over 300 registers. So we've been very fortunate to see urban freight grow as an interest topic. Others, CIVITAS, our relationship with CIVITAS, I would say is definitely growing. We went from one attendee being me to today we have 5 representatives from the United States here, and I hope that grows in the future, as well as we've seen more CIVITAS and more European collaboration come to the United States as well. And you all have also been represented in many panels in the United States at different conferences, and we hope to continue to see that grow. Additionally, we had our first tour and peer exchange over here in the UE in the EU in 2016. That consisted of a tour of about 17 projects in 5 days and also a lot of discussion. Out of that, actually, one of our US MPOs was able to implement their electrical delivery truck project with UPS as a result of coming over here. So that was a direct product that came of that twinning effort of peer exchanging. In September of this year, in the week of September 10th, the United States will hold an international urban freight peer exchange in Baltimore. So we hope that you will join us. Henrietta and Mons are, of course, a part of the planning process. And so as the save the date comes out in the next couple of weeks or so, we will make sure that you get that information. Other things you need to be aware of. I think one of the most important things we want to focus on is what are our next steps in terms of twinning with the EU. And one of the things we want to focus on is city to city, metropolitan area to metropolitan, and in some case, university to university. So we really want to look at localities that have projects in common. And to give you an example, say that we have a US city that really is implementing a project around cycling, cargo cycling. We really want to team those 2 cities up from beginning to end so they can share information with their counterpart as they implement the project from planning to implementation. And we want to measure in terms of cost savings, in terms of time, in terms of research, in terms of implementation. So I think the goal is we are really reaching to be the gold star of twinning. And urban freight has been a great example thus far, and we want to continue that. So 1 is we want to pair up those cities and localities. 2, we want to document our successes, and we want to measure productivity. So again, in terms of this relationship with the EU, we are really in a position to continue to be a gold star standard in twinning, and we want to grow that even further. So the next goal is if you have a freight project directly related to urban implementation, whether it be planning, whether it be on-the-ground implementation, whether it be lockers. We want to twin up city to city or state to state or locality. So if you have an interest in that from the EU side, I definitely say see Henrietta and Mons. And I'll be reaching out to our states and localities in the United States as a part of their urban freight planning process to see what they want to work on. And then we'll be collaborating to make those teams. And I'm hoping that those teams can start to meet at the September meeting and at least start their initial talks. So that is all I have. I hope I was in my 9 minutes. I tried to reduce it to save time for someone else. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You want to take 1 or 2 questions now? So Tamiko has traveled 9 hours from Washington. So she mentioned 2 important dates. One date is in Baltimore. We're going to meet again in Baltimore. The Commission, we are going to help you to support you financially to get there. So we have a number of kind of scholarships that will make sure that at least the representatives of these 4 projects can come over to Baltimore for.
Yes, we're hoping, and a couple of, in case you're wondering about the topics, we've only started preliminary talking about topics, but some of the focus will be on, of course, freight corridor planning. That's been a big topic for the EU as well as the United States. Also e-commerce, and we have someone speaking about e-commerce here, Ms. Dr. Conway. We also are going to focus on alternative fuels for urban freight delivery. I know one of the things that the European government has asked for is potentially access issues. And then also we are going to focus on some of the partnerships, because if we can, we would like at that time for cities to start talking a little bit about their common interests so we can move forward. And then of course, some of the exhibits here today, as well as some of the United States exhibits, we hope to have some exhibits so you can not just see projects, but also other demonstrations and logistics techniques that people are using in terms of urban freight. So that's kind of our focus.
Excellent. So first or second week of September, Baltimore, and then we're going to come back again to Washington for TRB.
Yes, and TRB this year we will be hosting with our partners from TRB, and Bill will be talking next. We'll be hosting an urban freight workshop. We were the most successful workshop last year at TRB. We had the highest attendance on Sunday. So kudos to urban freight. We're growing in numbers, so we hope to duplicate that this year. And we're also expanding our partnership on the U.S. side to include our partners in AASHTO as well. And that's the organization that represents transportation infrastructure on the state side.
Excellent. So Tamiko will be around for the whole of the 2 days. It is her obligation to answer as many questions about what's happening in the US on any different level. Yeah. So thank you so much, Tamiko.